so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? With purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm Lori LeBay, the host and founder of Alzheimer's Speaks. We're going to have a great show for you today. But prior to starting, we always get new listeners, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Alzheimer's Speaks and who we are and what we do. Bottom line, Alzheimer's Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And we believe really strongly in joining forces and sharing knowledge and just having these everyday conversations about life with dementia. We really think that's the only way we're ever going to make any ground in terms of removing stigmas and providing services is by hearing what are the needs of our communities and our people and our families and professionals who are all dealing with this disease. We also believe at our core that collaboration is the only way that we're going to win this battle against dementia. And I have to say, we know that approach is working. You see, because of all of your likes, your clicks, your shares with your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Twitter tribes, your Pinterest peeps, you have had a huge impact on Alzheimer's Speaks, and you are actually the ones that got us recognized as the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's, according to ShareCare and Dr. Oz. So I really encourage you to continue to like and share these programs, because the more we can push information and content out to the general public and to our own personal spheres, the more likely somebody in need is going to grab them, and they're not going to feel as isolated. We also, thanks to you and pushing us out, we're recognized as an architect of change for humanity through Maria Shriver's work, and that was just quite the surprise. And we were thrilled about that. But both of those designations we really share with our listeners, because we don't believe that we're doing any of this on our own. We really believe that it's the collaboration that is making the difference out there. I also want to let you know that maybe you, our next listener, is a perfect guest. Here at Alzheimer's Speaks, we try to raise everyone's voice. So that goes from the person who is actually diagnosed with dementia to family members, to friends and advocates, researchers, professionals in the industry, authors. We've had musicians, we've had movie directors, we have had gals playing football for the cause. There is no end to where this conversation can go. And again, we really feel that it takes all of us to talk about these things and inspire one another in terms of making a difference in our care culture. So please reach out to me at 651-748-4714, 651-748-4714, or you can always shoot me an email at Lori, and I spell that Lori, at alzheimersspeaks.com. Let me see. What else do I want to tell you? We are still going on our cruise in November, and we would love for you to join us. We are going to have a fabulous symposium, and we're going on a 7-day cruise to the Bahamas. And we have an excellent team pulled together. Harry Urban, Michael Ellenbogen, Lori Shearer, and Mary Reed all are going to be speakers. All are diagnosed with dementia. And then we have Becky Watson, who is a music therapist, and Cindy Lazinski, who heads up Northern Colorado's dementia-friendly community there, who's doing some really cool things, along with myself. So you can just go to alzheimersspeaks.com, find out more. There's a video you can play. You can print out the program to see what all we're going to be discussing over that time period, and what ports we're going to be going to. Let's see. The Newman Long-Term Care Group is also giving away 5 copies of Maria Shriver's new coloring book called Coloring Your Mind, which is really great. And it is it has tips along with coloring. It has general education in it. So again, you can go to alzheimersspeaks.com and click on our blog to get more information there. And then I also want to mention last is we have pulled together helpful tips when dealing with dementia. And this is a free trifold download. So feel free to go ahead and grab that. It has just a lot of little tips when you're dealing with dementia that we wanted to share with you. So let me introduce our guest today. Very excited to have this woman with us. She is super impactful and really a wonderful voice for dementia as a whole. Her name is Susan Macaulay, and she was the primary care partner for her mom who lived with dementia. And she feels that she is a better dementia care advocate because of that process. She also does facilitates workshops, and she's a real prolific blogger. She has also developed a program called BANGS, BANGS, which is an approach to help care partners reduce aggression and calm challenging situations which can arise when dementia hits. So, Susan, I'm just thrilled to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Lori, and I'm also thrilled to be with you. I've been following you for a long, long time, and I wish I'd found you sooner in my journey. But anyhow, it's just a real pleasure to be here. I'm delighted.
Well, good. It takes all of us, and so many of us have gotten involved because of our personal journeys and just kind of taken a stand in terms of, things can be better. And I love talking to people like yourself because you really come from a center of passion and purpose to really make life better for the next guy out there. So I so appreciate that. Do you mind sharing with our audience before we kind of get into our formal talking points in terms of, when was your mom diagnosed and what was that experience like for you and your family?
Well, my mom was diagnosed in 2006. And at the time, I was living overseas. I had been an expat for about 13 years at that point. I lived in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And I would come home once a year at that point, and then it increased to twice a year after 2006. I had seen, because I was away and I was coming back and forth and I wasn't there all the time, it was really easy for me to see the changes that were happening, and perhaps less so for other family members. And so it really, I noticed, all the typical things, memory declining fairly rapidly, things like finding the phone in odd places, keys in the freezer, all of those kinds of things. And I watched sort of at a distance as this rolled out over 5 years. And in 2011, I decided that I felt she just couldn't live in her own home anymore. She was living in a great big house out in the country, and she was unable to cook for herself anymore. She'd lost a lot of weight, about 20 pounds. And I really was pushing the person who lived my sibling who lived closer by, to provide her with more care, that just wasn't happening. So I decided to abandon my life in Dubai and return to rural Canada to take care of Mom in her own home, one-on-one.
Wow. That's a big, 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 big commitment. It's one thing when they're in your community, but when you are, overseas, that can be a real challenge in commitment. Did you have any doubts in terms of what you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. I dragged myself kicking and screaming from my overseas posting.
Well,
it was an agonizing decision because I had an amazing life.
mm-hmm.
I had my own business. I was, lived in a very nice area. I made good money, tax free. It was really an amazing existence, and I gave all of that up. I'm not. I don't want anyone's pity, and I'm not a martyr, not in the least. But I didn't have any caregiving skills.
Mm-hmm.
None whatsoever. I didn't even have children.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was a completely new experience for me. And so I went from living in the city to being in the nearest town was 7 miles away. So I was in the country completely. It was Mom and I together 24/7 for the first several months until I was able to get support, outside support, care workers to come in. And so it was a complete change of life. And yeah, it was like jumping off a cliff.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine. How did your, and I just want to ask you one other question because I just find this always fascinating, the dynamics of the family. How did your family react to you coming in and getting involved? Because I know that sometimes isn't always received well.
Well, that's an understatement. it it actually ended in war, essentially. The family was torn apart. Um, I wanted my mom to have more and better care, and other family members wanted her to have less and cheaper care.
Mm-hmm.
And so the situation deteriorated over time, and it still has not been resolved. Mom has died a year ago this month, actually a year ago next week, and there's still disputes between myself and my sibling.
Oh.
So it's sad. It's really sad. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can happen with families. That can definitely happen with families. Well, hopefully we can honor your mom today in terms of talking about what you've learned through this experience. I'm a big one in terms of taking the negative and making it a positive, and from the work that I see you've done, you've definitely pushed things forward and seem to have that philosophy as well. Making the best out of a situation. If this is what's going to happen, well, let's figure out the whys and help the next guy in line, so it's not quite as difficult. So kudos to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you want to help others not make the same mistakes? I know that you mentioned this. So what kind of mistakes do you feel that you made?
Well, some of the things I did were, like a lot of caregivers, were done out of ignorance. And I knew nothing of the disease when I came back to take care of Mom. As I said, I knew nothing about caregiving. And I was drafted into this role that I really didn't want to be in. And so I did all the things that caregivers, or a lot of caregivers, do. I argued with her. I didn't put myself in her shoes. I failed to look at the world from her perspective. Just to give you an example, when I first came back, I had, as you can imagine, I had quite a load of baggage that I brought with me, all different kinds of baggage, physical baggage and emotional baggage as well. But on the physical side, I had these five or six big suitcases full of clothes, which I took into the living room because I couldn't. She lived in a 2-story house, and I couldn't carry all these big bags upstairs myself. They were way too heavy. So I'd put them on the living room floor and opened them up, and I was unpacking them slowly over a period of time. So I would take some things out and carry them upstairs and hang them in my closet and do a little bit each day. And having these suitcases open and spilling out all over her living room floor, as you can imagine, caused my mom to have a great deal of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And she kept asking me, when are you going to empty these suitcases? And instead of doing it, I kept saying, well, I was almost like a teenager. Yeah, I will, Mom. I will. And I really didn't understand how that situation was impacting her and her well-being and her level of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have so easily corrected it. And so it was little things like that. And the arguing, definitely, she would say black and I would say white. And I tried to use logic. I tried to use rational arguments, none of which, as you well know, work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, but we do what we've always done until we kind of get batted over the head enough times to go, oh, maybe we need a different approach, to what it is we're dealing with. But it is amazing sometimes how long it takes us to learn that. And I think pretty much every care partner goes through that. It's just like, if we just get into this routine, if you just get into my routine, if we go back to the way it was, it will be smooth. Instead of realizing they can't come into our routine anymore. They can't enter that world. And so really it's much easier for us to adjust, but we get so stubborn, and I say we, because I was right there with you. And I think most who have cared have gone through the same situation. You argue that no, this will be easier. And, as the saying goes, when mom is happy, the whole world is happy. And we don't really take that to heart when we're arguing with somebody with dementia, trying to tell them, to do things a little bit differently. And how long did it take you to kind of figure that out? Do you remember?
It happened over a period of couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I made little inroads. Like in the first month or two, I definitely got the better not to argue
Mm-hmm.
down pat. But there were little adjustments that I had to make and continue to make. And surely I learned a lot during that time when we were living together. And I learned even more when she went into a long-term care facility a year later.
Mm-hmm.
But, I really feel that we're that caregivers and everyone, in fact, is overwhelmed. We're all overwhelmed and fed this the negative narrative about dementia and Alzheimer's disease in particular, and all of the behaviors that it causes. People are told that when people have Alzheimer's disease, that they become violent, they become aggressive, they become anxious, they wander. And I hate that term, but we give these labels to behavior that is actually quite a normal response to circumstances under which anyone would behave the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So, if somebody took you and locked you in your home, or took you somewhere and locked you in a place where you didn't know anyone, and the people around you all seemed to be crazy, well, of course you would react. Of course you would want to try to get out.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you would have behaviors that people might consider challenging. So to me, I believe we need to shift our perspective around what exactly are the symptoms of the disease. What does it cause people to do? What happens, and how are the behaviors either related or not related to the disease? Because if we say that it's the disease that's causing these behaviors, then we don't have a chance to adjust our own behavior and have a greater impact on the result.
Which is very true, because most people they're not looking at their own behavior, they're looking at the behavior, which is really just a reaction that, like you said, anybody Anybody reacts, everyone reacts to different situations, but it's our attitude and our perceptions that causes our reaction. And it's not always the reaction that is the issue. It's our judgment that it's now a problem because it doesn't fit into what we want. And it's amazing that we if we put the hat on that says, really they're more similar to us than different, then we don't go. I've found anyways that we don't go there so fast, and we start looking for the why. Why did they react like that? And then we try to remove some of those trigger points, which is what we would do with a child, which is something we, do throughout our day. But for some reason with a person with dementia, we want to hold them on to this pedestal state and say, no, you must follow the rules. You must react to my wishes, and we kind of turn into this subtle dictatorship, which we don't even know that we're doing. And
yes, exactly.
And yet if somebody tells us not to react, you just want to smack them going, well, what do you mean? I have a right to feel that way. I have a right, and we can justify it for ourselves. So we have to learn to justify it for the person with dementia so that we can figure out what's making them feel uncomfortable, because that's usually, don't you think, what it comes down to? They're scared, they're uncomfortable, they're there's some kind of fear, when people are getting combative. It isn't just, I think I'm going to go smack somebody because it feels good. I mean, usually they're trying to protect themselves, if there's an aggressive state going on. That's been my experience anyways. I don't know if that's been yours.
Oh, absolutely. Completely my experience. And in fact, I developed a list of questions that I've shared with, actually, it's had about 4,000 shares from my blog.
Wonderful.
And because it's a way of reframing. So let me just read you a couple. I've clicked on through to the blog, and let me see if I can get it. So that it's a downloadable PDF. Mm-hmm. So it's 20 questions that help explain why people with dementia get agitated and physically aggressive. So, for example, the questions are things like, how would you react if your children took away your car keys and told you couldn't drive anymore for no reason?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be too happy with that.
Yeah. How would you respond if someone told you strangers would be coming to your house where you had lived alone for decades to take care of you because you couldn't take care of yourself?
Yep, would feel pretty offended and pretty upset.
Yeah.
Pretty scared of what's coming
How
next.
would you react how would you react if you wanted a drink and you were told you couldn't have one?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We'd all fight back.
Yep.
And people, well, as you well know from doing dementia chats and things such as your cruise where you're having people who live with dementia all the time, they're just like anybody else.
Yep. Yeah.
And so of course they're going to react with in a way that we might not like, but which is perfectly normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, it's just that getting people to reframe and step back and go, just that simple question of how would I react? How would I react to that? I don't like giving my car up for a 15-minute oil change, let alone someone yanking the keys and telling me I can't drive anymore. It's like, come on, let's get real here. This girl wants to be in control, and I want my options available to me. And that makes my world feel really small, really quick. And we're talking big, major things. We're talking cars and housing options and, people that surround you, are they a friend or aren't they? We hear all these horror stories on the news, and now you're inviting strangers into my house. That alone, even if they like the person, can be scary just because of all the press and stuff that's out there, on top of the stigmas of losing independence, instead of, because we're not good about teaching people when they get help, they can be more independent. We go in the opposite way. Oh, if you need help, you're dependent. And the whole point of giving help is to make people more independent, to make them more calm, more happy. But that's not where we go. That's not how we explain it as a society. That's not what's projected on us. So we have some really big shifts that we have to make in our care culture that I don't know how we got where we are. And I guess I don't even want to spend the time to investigate that because it would take too much energy. But we really need to look at, like you said, reframing things and changing perceptions and attitudes in terms of aging and illness and in dementia as a whole. Let me ask you this. I really want to talk about, your BANGS program. And I know that you are a really vocal advocate against, inappropriate use of antipsychotic drugs in dementia care. Can you tell, because a lot of people who haven't stepped into this, they don't really even know what an antipsychotic drug is or how it could impact people as a whole. Give people a little background as to, what you're feeling and why.
Okay, so this really comes back to the way that we see the behavior of people who live with Alzheimer in particular, and other dementias as well. So we see this behavior. It seems to us we frame it in a way that it's abnormal, that they're behaving in an irrational way, and so in order to stop them from doing the behavior, rather than changing our approach, which is what BANGS is all about, really. It's about changing our approach. Instead of doing that, people want a pill to solve the problem. Mm-hmm. And antipsychotic medications, as the name implies, are medications that are meant for people who have psychosis. Mm-hmm. They're not intended for use on people who have Alzheimer's disease and other kinds of dementias. But as there are no other treatments, and people, even medical professionals, many medical professionals, are unaware of the kinds of approaches, that more positive approaches, behavioral and social and environmental approaches that might help to reduce the behavior that is being the responsive behavior of the person with dementia. They're prescribed these antipsychotic medications, which tend to sedate the person. Mm-hmm. And what happened with my mom is that she was given these drugs, and when she went into long-term care, where the staffing levels weren't sufficient, people didn't have enough time, and also they weren't their knowledge of how to interact and engage people with Alzheimer's disease was limited, even though they were meant to be a memory care. The unit that she was on was meant to be a memory care unit. Her behavior was interpreted as in such a way that she was labeled as aggressive, she was labeled as a wanderer, she was labeled as violent, and the dose of antipsychotics that she was given on a daily basis from the time she went in until the time she died, put her to sleep. She was in a catatonic state for 4 to 5 hours every day.
Oh, jeez.
And yeah, and I'm not alone in this. Mm-hmm. This happens to a lot of people. And often you'll hear of people going into nursing homes, going into long-term care facilities, and they see, everyone's sitting around kind of slumped over and looking like they're asleep. Well, it may well be that those people aren't asleep. Mm-hmm. It may be that those people are medicated with some kind of antidepressant or antipsychotic because their behavior is interpreted in a way that, it could be addressed in other ways, but instead they're given a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really feel that, I was angry that my mom it wasn't the disease that robbed her of her quality of life. It was the medication she was given. And the medications, in addition to sedating, they increase the likelihood of people falling because it makes them unsteady on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
It causes additional confusion. They may also cause, as many drugs do, the reason that the drug is given, it actually causes the person to have symptoms that the drug is meant to address.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the side effects.
Yeah, and the contraindications with multiple drugs. I mean, that is something that isn't screened nearly as well as it needs to be. And just because a doctor just prescribes it doesn't mean it's going to be a good mix with other medications, because not all of them are trained in that. And so, you really need to talk with your pharmacist and have those things reviewed. Too, because, one can lead to another, and then they give you another pill or medication to fix that when maybe it was a mixture of, a combination of medications to begin with that could be changed. Instead of throwing one more thing into it, it's just dealt with by symptoms and not causes. And I think that's kind of the root of your BANGS program. You're looking at causes for the symptoms.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so the approach of BANGS is really what I did was I took the work of many different people and my own experience. For example, I looked at and I attended a training course with Teepa Snow, who, as you know, is one of the gurus in terms of changing the way we interact with people. And I looked at the work of Naomi. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name.
Naomi File.
Mm-hmm. File. And my own experience, and I went, okay, what works? What worked for me in the long term? After I'd gone through this learning process. And I found that many of the techniques that I was using were also ones that were endorsed by Teepa Snow, Naomi Fale, and others, like Dr. Alan Power. The list goes on and on. They're becoming more and more dementia care pioneers. So BANGS is really an approach, and each of the letters in the word stands for a step, a technique, a skill, a way of diffusing a situation where you may be having conflict or things are escalating in a way that is not productive. Let's put it that way. So the B stands for breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that you think is fairly simple and straightforward, but when you get in a situation that's stressful, many of us, the first thing we do is to stop breathing, to hold our breath. So,
which is very true. You just get mad and you want to scream, and your face gets red, and I mean the whole chemistry of your body changes, when we get upset. And we don't, and we, especially in the U.S. here, we don't breathe right. We've never been taught, how to breathe. And so I find it interesting that there's, with the yoga classes, there's a lot of breath classes that are taking place and teaching people how to breathe deep and how to pause. And, kind of like when your mom used to say, count to 10 before you react. But we don't do that ourselves. We just kind of go off, and react to somebody with dementia instead of like taking just those couple of deep breaths, counting to 10 and going, is this worth it? Is this what I really think it is? What's the cause? I mean, those simple questions change everything in those 10 little seconds, to take a deep breath. And so I love that you start out with that, because I think breath can change everything. And it's something we all do. It's something we all have to do. So why not learn to do it more appropriately and more effectively? So I'll let you go on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just had to get that in
No,
there.
that's fine. No, breathing is essential, and you make a good point. Yoga breaths are particularly calming and soothing. And if you're more calm, then the person is going to be more calm.
Yep.
So I won't go into a great deal of detail on each of these, but let me just give an overview. And then if people want to, they can go to my blog, and there's a free hour-long webinar that explains the whole approach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no there's no sales attached to it. There's nothing like that. It's simply, I'm trying to help people to not get into situations that I was in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Where things got out of control. So breathe. B is for breathe. A is for, there are three things under A, and I'm just adding another one as well. But this ties in perfectly with what you've just talked about jumping in. And so the A's are, first of all, to assess. So rather than jump in and start doing something, try to figure out what it is that's gone on and what is going on. Mm-hmm. That's the same as any first responder will do. Mm-hmm. No, they don't automatically begin to give CPR, for example. They take a pulse first. They listen for a breath first. So A is for assess. Second, accept that you're the one in control of the situation. The person who's living with dementia has less capacity to deal with it than you do. It's probably more than likely. And then thirdly, agree. Mm-hmm. Just agree with whatever it is that they're saying. Don't try to, as you said earlier, step into their world instead of expecting them to step into ours, because their reality may not be the same. Mm-hmm. And one that was suggested to me a couple of days ago, which I fully agree with, is ask permission. And so instead of, for example, undressing somebody, well, it's time to have a shower, let's go, let's take your clothes off, it would be a more productive approach might be to say, would you like me to help? Can I help you? Mm-hmm. Go ahead and do whatever the task is, rather than presuming that just because the task needs to be done, that you're going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I like with what you're saying, you're talking about, instead of stepping into their world, a lot of times we step on their world. And it really just takes...
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of again, looking at it different. How are we stepping? Are we stepping up to empower, or are we just stepping up to check stuff off our list and get something done because it makes us feel good? It empowers us to check something off our list, because then we feel like we're doing something, instead of doing something really productive and helpful and supportive and empowering. And so who are we doing these things for? And that was a big revelation for me when I was caring for my mom, because I had this big old checklist, that I would run around with. And it all looked person-centered. And I would talk with people, and they would all have their little lists, and it all seemed person-centered, until I realized one time when I was asking people about what they had to focus on, they all had this little twang in their voice that said, this isn't really how I envisioned my life. And that's the moment that I realized that when we're caring, our emotions trump our tasks. And if I really don't want to be in that space, it's going to show, and it's going to affect how I care and how I approach, and it's going to affect the person that I'm dealing with. And so I really had to switch and make them be first and not step on their world, but step into it. And when I stepped into it, I decided that instead of focusing on my tasks, I had to focus on 3 little things, which I call your memory chip. Are they safe? Are they happy? Are they pain-free? And when I focused on truly stepping into their world, making sure that they were safe, happy, and pain-free, everything changed. And then I saw the things that I didn't need to do that I thought I had to do because nobody told me different, and that I had to be totally responsible in an ABC fashion. And all of a sudden now I see I can make alphabet soup and mix this all up and do it really different. And it can be really gratifying and joyful when everyone was kind of doing the doom and gloom thing with it. So, yeah, I think what you're talking about is the stepping in instead of stepping on, and accepting that there is a big difference between the two. So kudos to you.
Well, thanks. What you've just described brings to mind a situation that I had with Mom when she was in the care facility. I used to bring her to my home for meals. And sometimes, well, often, in fact, I videotaped and audio taped our times together. And on this particular occasion, there was a window between, like a pass through between the kitchen and the dining area. And she wanted to get up. I was preparing the meal, and she was on the other side, and she kept getting out of her chair, and she was not very steady on her feet because, again, coming back to these medications. And I was worried about her. So I kept going around to the other side and making her, in a nice way,
Mm-hmm.
sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a video of this little scenario, and I chopped it all up and so that it looks like, she's constantly trying to get up and I'm constantly trying to make her sit down, and it's kind of cute. And then when I got to the end of producing this video, I looked at it and I went, because I was trying to make dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and I was getting frustrated by the fact that I had to go and keep making her sit down. And then when I looked at the video, I thought to myself, dinner really wasn't that important.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been better for me to go on the other side and walk around with her for 10 minutes.
Isn't that amazing?
Dinner would have been delayed.
Yep. Isn't that amazing, though, when you get that revelation? You just kind of go, holy crap, how did I miss this? Because it's really a simple little thing, but we're so busy being busy and thinking that we're being attentive, but we're really being attentive on a very superficial level. And I think that's one of the beauties of dementia is once you step into it, the level of intimacy on just really small little details is so dramatic and so empowering and so calming. And you just kind of go, wow, how did I miss this all these years?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that was exactly my experience. Very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And my connection with my mom deepened. It wasn't, I didn't feel at all like I was losing her.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, quite the opposite. I felt like our connection was getting, it was more profound. It was more spiritual. It was more, it was richer. The more I paid attention and focused on being,
Mm-hmm.
and the less on doing, the better things got.
Yep. And I agree with that. I explain it to people that I didn't realize there were levels to unconditional love. And she taught me there were a lot of different levels that I didn't know existed at all. And it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and you can't even really put it into words, but it's just this connection and this calmness and this level of acceptance, that just grabs a hold of you. And once you've had it, you'll never, ever forget it. You can't, because it's so rare out there to feel that loved and that accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why I feel so sad when I hear people that have such a negative experience because they focus on what's being lost instead of what remains.
Mm-hmm.
And so their whole journey or their whole story with the person whom they love, it turns into something evil and destructive and horrible, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, but that's kind of what society has taught us, that this is,
yes.
It's doom and it's gloom, so buckle up for the ride.
Yeah. That's right.
And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's one of the things, like, I love having this conversation with you, because I just feel like, we're soul sisters here. And, when you meet people, even though we haven't physically met, just virtually met, it's just, it calms my heart, and it gives me great hope to go, oh, someone else has it too. They got it. They get this, and it's like this little army is being built out there of people who really get it and are willing to take the time and the energy to spread the word, so that maybe others can learn it a little faster and a little easier without some of the heartbreak and the frustration that many of us have gone through to get this life lesson. Because I really do think it's a life lesson.
I'm absolutely 100% totally on side with you. We are completely on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Totally on the same page. But let me finish BANGS before. I mean, we could probably talk for a whole hour more about just that. But anyway, I'm glad you have that. I'm glad you had the same experience that I've had, and I just wish that everybody could have that same experience instead of all the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
The suffering is not required.
Yep.
Anyway, so B is for breathe. A is for assess, accept, and agree. N is for never argue. If you never argue, you won't get into any fights.
Yep.
So that's really easy. Just don't do it. G, and this comes back a little bit to what we've just been talking about. G is for go with the flow, and go with their flow. Let go of your ego, and that's what all those task-oriented things are about. And the person doesn't recognize me anymore, and therefore they're not there anymore. That's about ego.
Mm-hmm.
So let go of your ego. Get over it. Get over the fact that they have this, whatever, Alzheimer's or Lewy body or whatever it happens to be. Get over that and get on with making a connection and making the rest of their life and your life while you're with them as happy and joyful and engaged as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally with G, get down, which is get down to, this is in a physical sense, to stop situations from escalating. Get down to their eye level. Look them in the eye instead of being, towering over them. Get down to it. And finally, the S is for, and this always worked every single time, say you're sorry. Sorry, I'm sorry we're having to go through this. This is hard, which it is hard.
Yep.
I'm sorry that, you're feeling bad. I'm sorry that, this isn't turning out the way we've intended. I'm sorry. And, if you're accused of something, just say, I'm sorry I did that, even if you never did it.
Yep. Yep.
And you can't stay mad at somebody who's saying they're sorry. It's, you can't.
Yeah, it's not that difficult to do, but it is very hard for some people to say they're sorry. It's a for some people their worlds are very black and white, and it's either this or it's that. And I think you know dementia is really a rainbow of colors and of opportunities. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about focusing on comfort and contentment, and is somebody safe, happy and pain free again. When we focus on those things, that's truly person centered. That removes our ego, and it really makes it all about them. And when someone else who we love is joyous or content, we get some of that too. Just like if we're angry and walk into a room, they're going to mirror it back. We get to mirror their joy. We get to absorb their contentment. And there's not enough of that around. And so if we can multiply that, that's a really cool thing to be able to be part of. And so again, it gets into that whole, like you were talking, reframing of dementia and what it looks like and what it can look like.
I mean, I had a comment on my blog the other day that from somebody who is obviously in a great deal of pain. She says dementia is an evil monster, and somehow this poem, a particular poem, says it all. It was the hardest 4 years ever going through this denial, anger, violence, as Mom tried to come to terms with what was happening to her. Then the awful time when she could do nothing for herself or talk or eat. And I mean, it's just like, it's this long, slow train through hell into oblivion. It's so sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
when
really is.
As you say, it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it really doesn't. And but it takes conversations like this for people to and for people to be brave enough to pop something like this open and listen to it and really listen, and be afraid to not try something different. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is it's not going to work. And if you're here already, it ain't working. You're looking for answers. So, and reframing failure, I think, is another big thing that we have to do as a universe, is looking at our failures really as gifts of getting closer to finding an answer and learning new ways. And instead of being embarrassed or worried that we might fail, we should be embarrassed of not trying. And because what if it does work? What if it does work?
Yes, and I learned so much from the failures that I had. I mean, all the failures are the reason that I'm here now and able to say I'm not afraid to say I did this, and I'm not afraid to show. Well, here's a situation where I said this, I did this. This is how I proceeded, and look what happened.
Yep.
It was completely wrong.
Yep.
Which I share in the hour-long webinar that's free again. People can find it by searching for BANGS, BANGS, on my blog. And I give a couple of scenarios that clearly demonstrate all the things that I was doing wrong. And so here's the wrong stuff, and here's the right stuff. Here's how you can avoid doing what I did and ending up where I ended up on that particular occasion. So if you use the BANGS approach, you can be more successful than I was, faster.
Yeah, and
so that, as you say, you help people not to have to experience the negative things that you let them make their own mistakes.
Yeah. And then please be brave enough to share those mistakes with others, and give the next hand up to somebody. Don't be shy about that stuff. Celebrate the triumphs and celebrate the things that don't work out so well. Because again, there's a lesson to be learned from everything. And for me, I found, one of the most powerful lessons that I learned was to ask and it sounds really simple, and some people might think it sounds really goofy, and that's, that's, them to decide. But I learned to ask in every situation, what's my lesson? And when I went in knowing there's always a lesson with the good, the bad, the ugly, it made me look at it different, and it got rid of the embarrassment and just said, I can learn. There's something to be learned from this situation. And it helped me remove the embarrassment or the awkwardness of it, and made me really excited to figure out what is the lesson so that I could then share it with somebody else and help them, lend a hand out to help the next guy, maybe avoid whatever it was that I had to learn. And maybe they won't have to falter and fall. They'll just be able to hear it and go, oh, yeah, I can avoid that detour, that crisis.
Yeah,
And
that's right. That's right.
And go that
Have you heard the story of the little girl and the room full of manure?
No, I have not heard that one.
Okay, so the little girl goes. She's brought to a house one day, and she opens the door in one of the rooms, and she finds the room is full of manure. This big huge stack of it,
Mm-hmm.
and she goes, "Oh my God!" And she runs. She says to the person with her, "Do you have a shovel?" And the person says, "What do you mean? It's a room full of manure." And she says, "Well, damn, there's got to be a pony in there somewhere."
Yep, looking at the bright side. Well, that's wonderful. Susan, I can't believe our hour is just about up. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to my blog, which is myalzheimersstory.com. And if they want to contact me, they can simply go to the contact page and send me a note. I would love for people to subscribe to the blog. You can do that by going to the subscribe part, which is at the top right-hand side of every page. And when people subscribe, they get the free links to downloads of five PDFs, one of which is the 20 questions that I read from earlier on. And watch the BANGS seminar.
Cool.
And I hope that it helps. Yeah, I hope that it helps people to defuse and de-escalate potentially confrontational situations, and that as a result, they get to build relationships with their loved ones who are living with dementia, and that it all turns into something good instead of something, that's some tragedy that's to be avoided.
Well, good. Well, Susan, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. I really, truly do appreciate it. And again, go check out her blog, myalzheimersstory.com, and check out her BANGS program. I think I think you got a good taste and flavor of it, but there's more to come. So definitely check that out. I do want to just give out a shout out here to the Alive and Social Network, which we broadcast from, and give a shout out to Rachel Perrin, who's the culinary director for Kowalski's Market, along with her producer and sidekick, Adam Lee. They do a lot of things about foodtastic meals and snacks and trendy nutrition things and everything kind of yummy for your tummy. Their show is called What's for Dinner Tonight. Their podcasts average about 15 minutes per episode, and it's perfect when you're busy yet hungry and trying to figure out what's for dinner. You can also go to Kowalskis.com. That's KOWALSKIS.com, and get complete menu ideas there. And don't forget to jot down and check out our dementia-friendly cruise. We're doing November 11th through the 18th. This fall to the Caribbean with Holland America. It's going to be a fantastic time. You do have to go through our travel agent, Kathy Schoaf, to be part of our group. But just go to alzheimersspeaks.com and you will find information there regarding that. What else do I want to tell you? Our last Dementia Chats, which is a video interview of people with dementia, we talked about the importance of social media on relationships. On the blog, you can find out more information about that book giveaway of Maria Shriver's Coloring Your Mind, which the Newman Long-Term Care Group is giving away. And you can also help spread the word and also register for a caregiver getaway. The homecareassistance.com/move for minds is giving a weekend away for caregivers, and they've got a grant to do this for 60 people. So sign up. You got nothing to lose. And don't forget about checking out the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. They just do a lot of really cool work in a holistic fashion. So wrapping up the show, I want you guys all to have a wonderful and safe week, and we will talk soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Hey everybody, Jared Sebesta here, host of Retire Repurposed. Now, this podcast is about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. We believe retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what could be the most impactful, purposeful, and fulfilling season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.